Now, in addition to hiring great employees, there are additional benefits, both direct and indirect, of hiring someone with a disability. Would you share, for those watching, some of the more direct benefits that they could expect?
Some of the more direct benefits they can expect are around tax deductions or tax-related benefits. One of these is the disabled tax credit, and the barrier removal deduction. There are also reduced training costs. And when I had spoken about that individual who had remained with the company for 10 years, he had gone through a training program. And it was not at the cost of the employer. When it comes to any of the tax incentives, I highly recommend that you speak to your accountant, and your accountant can talk to you about which ones are available to your business. Page 10 of the toolkit goes into greater detail on taking advantage of these strategies and these benefits. As a marketing professional, Jen, could you elaborate on some of the additional benefits?
Sure. So some additional benefits, as I see them, is an increased customer base. So we're talking today about people with disabilities and LGBT people with disabilities. And good marketing practice dictates that when your employee base reflects your customer base, you're going to get more business from that demographic. So if we're looking at the purchasing power, which is really the financial ability to purchase goods or services, the people with disabilities community is $220 billion. And the LGBT community is $884 billion. So if we're looking at those two numbers, we're talking about over $1 trillion of buying power from these two groups. So any small business would be in their best interest to be reaching out to these two diverse groups, merely because when you have a more diverse workforce, you're going to attract those customers.
And you can see more on the statistics on page 10 of the toolkit, which will back up just what Jen said. And wow, Jen, those numbers are incredible. And they really can mean a lot to a small business in terms of attracting new customers. I think that's fantastic.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about innovation in the workplace. I know you have personal experiences around this from yourself, but then also those you've employed. Could you share a little bit more with us?
Well, people with disabilities often have challenges which make them have to think about how they can do things that other people do, and they may have to do them a little bit differently. I liken it to someone who's left-handed. In addition to having a disability, I'm also left-handed. So I had to learn how to use scissors, right-handed scissors, and live in a right-handed world. And whether that meant, for some people, batting left-handed in the right-handed world, having to use that catcher's mitt if you're into sports, it makes a bit of a difference, and you learn to do things. You get to be creative and think out of the box. And people with disabilities think the same way.
So Sharon, in my speaking with over 30 employers around hiring someone with a disability, some of them expressed concerns about filling specific positions within their companies. Could you shed a little bit of light on that concern?
As I have said before, there are many people with disabilities, and all of them have different talents and different levels of education. So there is a great likelihood that you will be able to find a person with a disability able to fill almost any position within your company. And so that should not be a concern. Like I said, for every job, there is a possibility there is someone with a disability who can fill that. And another point I wanted to make is that you probably have employed a person with a disability and you really did not know it, or maybe somebody with a disability is being employed by you right now, because many disabilities are invisible, and often we don't even think about that.
Well, for me, I like to think a little bit of this as common sense. People generally know what their abilities are, and people with disabilities tend to be more in tune with what they are or are not capable of. But let's face it, as small business owners, when we put a job out there, we're going to get dozens, if not hundreds of people who apply who are simply not qualified. I feel like it's a good weeding out mechanism to see that when you're finding someone with a disability, chances are they will be able to do that job.
I would agree with you. Someone with a disability is much more aware of what their capabilities are and are less likely to apply for a job that they cannot do. And you talked about going through those hundreds of resumes and a lot of people who really are not qualified. I think we've all experienced that. I try to take it with a sense of humor. Some of them are very funny. But we've all gone through that, and I think you can cut down a bit of that by looking at people with disabilities as potential employees.
So, one of the other concerns, at least what I heard from the employers I spoke to, was they made reference about interacting with employees with a disability or a potential employee, sometimes in the case of the interviewing process, for example. Could you give maybe some pointers on ways around that?
Okay, well, first of all, there are two different parts to that. The first is just interacting with an individual with a disability. And I believe the most important thing to remember is really the golden rule, to treat that person as you would like to be treated yourself. And to really remember the word respect. Aretha Franklin was right. You know, R-E-S-P-E-C-T. That is the most important thing. There really is no code. And if you can remember that, you're going to do just fine. As for interviewing varies, and what you're allowed to do in an interview varies by the type of company you are. If you're a federal contractor subject to Section 503, you can ask a person if they have a disability before they're hired, and you know if you are one of those companies. If not, then there are rules around what you would want to do regarding interviewing a person with a disability. First of all, you can't ask them, again, unless you're a federal contractor, if they have a disability. And really, there's a lot of common sense around this. And those rules are very similar to those of any protected class. And the legal definition of protected class is any group of people protected by the law. So that would be women of childbearing age, pregnant women, people over 40. Those are the kinds of people that you might have to be concerned about what you say. But really, it's common sense. And it's very similar to asking, a faux pas might be very similar to asking a young woman of childbearing age if she plans to get pregnant anytime soon. So we all know that's not the right thing to do. The same thing when it's talking with people with disabilities. Really not a lot to remember or to get nervous about.
Well, I hope by this point in time, those watching are thinking, well, where can I find a qualified individual with a disability as an employer?
I would recommend them to the workplace because that is a great place to start. However, you will find references to additional resources in the toolkit. And you as a small employer can find answers to the questions you have about hiring people with disabilities and diversifying your workforce, to include them and LGBT people with disabilities, and also provide you with the services that you need.
In our experience, I know for me personally as well as for you, we've found that it's no harder to hire someone with a disability, and as we've outlined today, the benefits are great in doing so, and it's not nearly as difficult as an employer may think. In fact, they may find their best employee yet.
I couldn't agree with you more, Jen. We hope that you found the information useful. To find out more, you can reference the toolkit, which is located on the workplace website, or you can contact the workplace. Thank you for your time.